Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, August the 13th, 2025. Today there is a trine between the moon and the sun, and it's an aspect that happens pretty often, every couple of weeks, and I usually say the same thing: moon trine sun. It's a pleasant aspect, it's quite harmonious, and so, all things being equal, it should make things work well. It's all about flow, it's about sort of yin and yang sort of being in balance. But what does it really mean? I can talk about it theoretically, but what kind of things happen when we see this trine between the two lights, the two most important planets in the sky? And that's something I want to look at later in the video. But first of all, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, August the 13th. So here is the chart for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if appropriate. So turning to this chart, this is set for New York at noon, we indeed see a trine between the moon and the sun. Moon in Aries making an 120-degree aspect to the sun in Leo. So we've got sun and moon both in fire signs. We are not going to see a trine between the sun and the moon in fire signs until the end of the year after this one, until the sun goes into Sagittarius. So make the most of it, and it being fiery, it will create energy, create opportunities for action, but harmonious action. There it goes again, harmony, harmonious. That's something to think about, with the sun and the moon making this 120-degree aspect. They're not resisting one another, and we should also perhaps see the sun and the moon in terms of the lunar cycle. It's a stage of the lunar cycle which may be especially harmonious, but I don't want to go into too much detail about that right now. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. Now, the moon does make other aspects. It does make squares to Venus and Jupiter. So what happens is that the moon makes a square to Venus and Jupiter, then it moves on to make a trine to the sun. And so, how do we look at moon square Venus and Jupiter? Now, there are two ways of looking at it. You could say, well, the moon is aspecting Venus and Jupiter, and so it's going to intensify the Venus-Jupiter influence. We have just had the exact conjunction between Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, but it's still pretty close. The two planets are, less than 1.5 degrees apart. So that aspect is still in force. All the fortunate things I've said about Venus and Jupiter are still in force. So the moon with those squares is reinforcing it, and so that's a way of looking at Venus-Jupiter in a positive light. Now, you could also say that there's a square between the moon and Jupiter, and a square between the moon and Venus. And under those circumstances, it could be about exaggeration, taking something too far. Moon in Aries square Venus and Jupiter. So something we do impulsively. Now, that might be an impulsive act of generosity. It's always nice to be generous, isn't it? But you can be over-generous, and I'm not just talking about money. You can be over-generous with your praise, even flattery. I don't think flattery, no, it's not about flattery. Moon in Aries is not a placement that flatters, but one can still be over-enthusiastic and perhaps not ask enough questions. So that might be a way in which it works. Though in the right situation, it may be fine to be emotionally indulgent. If there's no risk, if one is not exposing oneself, weakening oneself by giving away too much of who one is on an emotional level. And really, that's about it. I mean, there are not a huge amount of sort of exact aspects. I don't see any exact aspects involving non-lunar entities. So we have to just consider what is still fairly exact. I've already mentioned Venus opposition Jupiter, and Venus conjunct Jupiter. So Venus conjunct Jupiter is still around. Mercury is still making a sextile to Mars, and it's not an exact sextile to Mars, but with Mercury sextile Mars, there are things we can say. There are ways in which we can make our presence felt, and if something annoys us or we want to express our opinions, it shouldn't be too difficult with that sextile. People can understand what we're trying to say. So that's the picture for today. I think that moon trine Sun may to a great extent sort of dominate the day, and probably in a way that is quite fortunate. Now, turning to the picture for Australia and New Zealand, here's a chart for Sydney. The moon is at 9 degrees Aries. It's a fair way off the exact trine to the Sun. So if you are in Australasia, then the moon trine Sun influence may not hit peak until sort of late in the day and into tomorrow, but still, moon is in Aries, sun is in Leo. There is still a trine relationship between the two lights, and so don't think that you're missing out on anything. And as the day progresses, that trine between the moon and the sun, will get stronger. And then we can look at things heliocentrically. So here is the heliocentric picture, and Mercury is now pretty close to Saturn. Yesterday I talked about the Mercury-Saturn conjunction. It was 4 degrees apart. Now it's only 2 degrees apart, and it's the other way. So Mercury has sort of made the conjunction to Saturn. Now it's 2 degrees apart, but still Mercury and Saturn are quite close. And also Mercury is making a sextile to Uranus. And so Mercury says something about our mind and the way we're thinking and how we're trying to negotiate things. So on one hand, we understand the limitations before us, but on the other hand, we want to create something new. And this sort of feeds into the Saturn-Uranus sextile, which I was talking about in my video that I did yesterday. So Saturn and Uranus is about trying to merge the principle of structure and discipline with the need for change and revolution. And so Mercury may be trying to negotiate this. We're trying to work out some way of keeping things on a stable footing, but also respecting the demand for change, because change is always important. If we're not happy with things, well, we've got to do something. We've got to say something. But with Mercury sextile Uranus, there may be a way of making our presence felt without causing too much disruption. We always need to cause some disruption because people have to notice us, but we don't want to be noticed in such a way that people run away. So that's the heliocentric view, and now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, August the 13th, 2025. Aries, things are looking good. Yesterday, the moon was pretty close to Saturn, and that conjunction between the moon and Saturn might have spoilt the fun. You felt that there was just something in your way. You wanted to be yourself, you wanted to take the initiative, but it wasn't so easy. Maybe you had your own reservations, your own fears even. And I know that one doesn't normally regard Aries as a sign which is fearful, but sometimes you have your doubts and you wonder whether a particular course of action is really worth it. And additionally, it could have felt that just for circumstances just weren't right. But now you're ready. You feel that you want to do something, and it's not just because the moon is trine the sun. It's also the moon is making a square to Venus and Jupiter, and so you can see things that might have been holding you back. You're aware of your responsibilities for sure, including your domestic responsibilities and the needs of your family. So you're aware of all that, and you're aware that you might not always get the support you're looking for, but you're ready. You're ready to move, to make a move. And moon trine sun, it's a great aspect. It's in fire signs, so you can act in such a way that is absolutely right. It might be dramatic. It might mean that you're making a lot of noise, but it's just the right thing to do. And so Aries, you can have the freedom you're looking for, and you don't have to make a big fuss about it. It will all come very naturally. And furthermore, it's not just that we've got the moon trine the sun, we've also got a sextile aspect between Mercury and Mars. Okay, Mercury might be starting to move away from Mars. I mean, Mercury is that really the case? Because you can see here that Mercury is at 4 degrees 34 Leo, and Mars is at 4 degrees 11 Libra, but Mercury has just gone stationary direct, so Mercury's moving quite slowly. So this sextile may be around for quite a long time. So let me just have a look. I should have sort of prepared this earlier, but it's going to be even closer tomorrow. And so it's strange as it might seem, although Mercury is in later degrees than Mars, that Mercury-Mars sextile is still applying. And the reason it's applying is because Mercury's just gone stationary. It's very slow. And Mars is just going at its normal speed. And so that Mercury-Mars sextile is getting stronger over the next few days. And so, now is a time when you can take advantage of it. It allows you to be open, and you'll know what to say. And think about what you're saying and what you're communicating. You can kind of get your way, but using a fairly light touch, and your sense of humor might be very important. It's about you making other people's lives more interesting through the power of your own words. And if you have ideas and suggestions, then feel free. Tell everyone about them, and just see what happens. And it could be a bit of a scattergun. Some people will think you're great, coming up with some great suggestions. Other people just won't be interested. So it does depend. But overall, you do have the ability to get through to people, and at times it might be hard work. And it just may be that not everyone is on your wavelength. But at the same time, there is a desire for unity. Not just in terms of individuals, but in terms of the whole collective and in your community, people want to get on with each other. They know that it's very difficult to get on sometimes, but they want things to work. People want to get closer to each other, and you, Aries, you can be in tune with that. And so through your actions, through your dynamism, Aries, you can indeed bring people together. So what does that say about relationships? Well, Mercury sextile Mars means that you should have no difficulty talking to the other person. So if there are serious matters that have to be dealt with, I think that you're going to know how to address them. But it's not just about seriousness. Even if it is serious, even if you are talking about something serious, something that really needs to be concentrated on, it's a big deal, even then, you don't have to make it sound serious. So it might be about sugarcoating. You can make something seem light, you can make it into a bit of a joke, but you'll never forget the underlying seriousness, especially as Saturn is in Aries. You can be serious when you want to be, but you just have to get the approach right. And that's the best way of getting on with people and getting people to like you. And I think people will like you. And yeah, in terms of close relationships, I think if something needs to be said, it can be said, and you can just say it in the right way. And additionally, we have got Moon square Venus and Moon square Jupiter. And with Moon square Venus, it might at times be trial and error, especially when dealing with the people who are really close to you, partners, spouses, maybe your family, those kind of people. There might be a sort of a temporary mismatch with Moon square Venus as you're trying to get the right words together. But in the end, you'll get through to the other person, because the Moon, having made that square to Venus, it makes a trine to the Sun, and as I like to say, the Moon trine Sun is very harmonious, and especially for you, Aries, because of course the Moon is in your sign. Taurus, you don't have to do everything at once. You might believe that you have to. There might be pressure on you to do lots of different things, and now's the time to get your act together. So the pressure is there, but you don't necessarily have to respond to this pressure. And it could well be, Taurus, that there are certain things you don't want to do. You might want to keep things to yourself, and it might be that some ruminating is required. That seems to be really appropriate. We shouldn't forget with Taurus that your sign, it's Taurus the bull. Bulls might like to charge and attack red flags, but it's not just about charging and red flags. There can be moments in the bull's life cycle where it just likes to sort of chew the cud and ruminate a bit and think and allow changing events to just sink in. And if you want to do that, then I think that might be the right thing to do. And you could say that a lot of the action, or rather the constructive action today, Taurus, is going to take place at your own level, or perhaps at the level of your family, or places that you know and trust, and you're just not quite ready to reveal things. And so if you want to adopt that approach, that is fine. And don't forget also we've got a trine between the Moon and the Sun. I'm talking a lot about this trine between the Moon and the Sun, and this aspect is it's great, and it's very centering. It allows you to work on, what is important, where you feel comfortable. And if you're honest with yourself, you're not going to feel comfortable if you're out there in the world, everyone looking at you. That's not for you at the moment. And so it could be quite a grounding experience having this moon trine sun. Though the moon does make a square to Venus, and we do have to think about Venus. Venus, of course, being your ruler. And over the last few days, we've had this conjunction between Venus and Jupiter, and I've gone on and on and on about this Venus-Jupiter conjunction, and I've told you how wonderful it is, and I think it really is wonderful, and it's still there. Venus is your ruler. It's still conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter is in Cancer. It's exalted in Cancer. So it's a really good aspect. And so, Taurus, you're still lucky, luckier than average, and I'm hoping that you're going to be able to make the most of this luck and create new situations for yourself. Now that means that although you might be inclined to sort of keep yourself to yourself, that doesn't mean you should do nothing. There are always things you can be doing, and there are things you can be doing in your own world to increase your luck. It's absolutely possible. And with the moon making a square to Venus and Jupiter, there may be moments of tension. You kind of feel you should be doing something, and you might not be entirely satisfied. That would be especially the case if you are away from other people. You might just feel that's not quite right. You should be saying something, but think again about this impulse. Just because you really believe you should say something doesn't necessarily mean you should. And things can happen at an inner level, as I've been sort of trying to explain over the course of this piece for Taurus. Things can happen at an inner level, and they can really work for you. And Taurus, I don't know what you're planning on doing today, what you might be planning on doing, but if you want to be in touch with authorities, organizations, governments, government departments, and I think you'll be quite good at it. You don't have to go out of your way there. You can call them up, maybe. You can meet them face to face. But if you do have connections with authority, people in authority, you'll know how to behave, and you'll know how to placate authority figures, or the bureaucrats. There may be low-level bureaucrats, any people like that you might have to deal with. You might have to argue with them, and not just in terms of government departments. It may be people like insurance companies, or I don't know, you might have a complaint about a product you bought, you want to get a return, anything like that. You will know how to handle them, and so don't be shy on that level. So that might be one area where you should be fairly bold, making complaints and getting someone in authority to listen to you. And if you yourself are in a position of authority, then I think that today you're going to be very effective. You can come over, not as a petty official or as someone who is power mad, but someone who is reasonable and who acts in everyone's best interests. And one other point is that in terms of the law of the land, or it may not be just the law of the land, the law of your city, or just administrative rules, all that kind of thing, you'll have a good grip of it all, and so you'll be able to talk about rules with confidence, and your understanding of the law at the moment should be pretty good. So that means that if you happen to be a Taurean lawyer or a judge, it should be a great day. Gemini. Mercury is doing something rather interesting at the moment, and it's stationary direct. That's true. I mean, it's starting to move forward. It's starting to gather speed, but it's moving quite slowly. And so, if you look at what's going on with Mercury, Mercury's at 4:34 Leo at noon New York time, and Mars is at 4:11 Libra. So it appears that Mercury is in sort of higher degrees from Mars and is moving away from a sextile to Mars. But actually that's not true, because Mercury, having just gone stationary direct, is still going very slowly, and Mars is going at its normal speed. So that means that at the moment Mars is going faster than Mercury. So for a short period of time, Mars will be moving apparently away from Mercury. Will be gaining distance on Mercury, and so that is an interesting situation which we'll see for the next few days. But then Mercury is speeding up all the time, and Mercury will catch up with that sextile to Mars, and so there is a fairly prolonged period of time where Mercury and Mars are playing games with each other, and they are in sextile aspect. And this sextile aspect, it's a good aspect, and it's in some respects a sextile is a mixture of a square and a trine, or an opposition and a trine. Now the reason I say that is because sextile is about the number 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. And so we've got the 2-ness of opposition and the 3-ness of ease. So Mercury sextile Mars is about putting a bit of effort into saying whatever you want to say, or into wheeling out your ideas, but still Mars is a dynamic planet, even though it's in Libra. And so with Mercury sextile Mars, you can communicate with real dynamism. And this creates a contrast perhaps with the situation we had, while Mercury was retrograde. At times when Mercury was retrograde, Gemini might have found it, difficult to say anything. Although, not for me. I mean, it's always difficult saying something, but I do say something every day. I mean, I have to put out my videos every day. Sign in Gemini, Taurus rising. I have to keep going. I have to keep talking. And so Mercury sextile Mars, there are things you can say, there are things you can communicate, and you should not be afraid of being dynamic, even angry if necessary. But I don't think anger is likely to be necessary. You can be forceful, and people will listen, and also you can be interesting. That's always important for a Gemini. One of the worst things you can say to a Gemini is that you're boring, or that you're repeating yourself. That's tough, and I say that from experience. Geminis do not like to be accused of being boring, and don't worry, Gemini. You're not boring. You can say interesting things, and you should try to be interesting. Make an effort, and look at things from a sort of a creative perspective, and offer opportunities. That's what people want. Make suggestions. It's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen. And in terms of the way you use language, you can be playful, and you can make people laugh, and in that way you can not just get their attention, but also get their favor. And don't feel that you have to run according to any script, because you can be surprising, and if you are surprising, people will appreciate that. You don't have to shock them, but you might do something or say something which creates change and gives people pause for thought, but also allows people to really appreciate you. I mean, what would life be like without Geminis? It would be pretty terrible, wouldn't it? It would be boring. It would be an intellectual and inspirational desert. Isn't that true? So, do what you have to do to get noticed, because people need you. And additionally, today we've got Moon trine Sun. Moon trine Sun is arguably the main aspect today, and Moon trine Sun, it's more of the same. It does allow you to be dynamic, exciting, and as far as your social life is concerned, things are starting to move better than yesterday. Because yesterday the moon was sort of conjunct Saturn, and that might have made things a bit slow. But now the moon has gone beyond that conjunction to Saturn. It's making a trine to the sun, and so you can really get things moving. And as I've been saying, if you've got something to say, then now is very much the time to say it. Now, one area that might require some caution is money, because there is a square aspect between, or two square aspects between the moon in Aries and the Venus Jupiter conjunction. So you've got moon square Venus, moon square Jupiter, and those two aspects might well have a financial dimension, and they might encourage you to do something with money that may not be advisable, or you could exaggerate or overreact, or you might just spend money and you hadn't planned on spending money, but you just do spend money, or it could be that your social life has financial implications. So maybe some of the people you're hanging out with are being irresponsible with money. Perhaps they're encouraging you to be irresponsible with money. And so, it's great to have a hectic social life, but it should not be an expensive social life. That would be unnecessary, but it is possible with the moon making square aspects to Venus and Jupiter. But that's just a negative view of the moon squaring Venus and Jupiter. We could just see, Venus and Jupiter as being two very fortunate planets, moon making a square to these fortunate planets, and that meaning that you are fortunate and you can be fortunate when you're with your friends. And we shouldn't forget closer relationships. You could say moon square Jupiter might be that there is a connection with another person, and you can get on very well with them. There might, to begin with, be a bit of tension, the moon making a square to Jupiter, square to Venus, but then the moon moves on, it makes a trine to the sun, and as I keep saying, moon trine sun is a very harmonious aspect, and sort of in the end you can get on really well with everyone, and you are sort of at one with your environment. Cancer. The moon is in Aries. It continues to move through Aries, probably in a more positive way than yesterday. So, yesterday, Cancer, we had a conjunction between the moon and Saturn, and that conjunction between the moon and Saturn might have been constructive, allowed you to sort of get yourself together to decide what is important, but it may not always have been easy, and it might have been a bit of a downer in the end. But now things are changing. The moon is continuing through Aries, and it's making a trine to the sun, and moon trine sun, it's good for everyone. And I think that it is particularly good for you. So it can be a day where things move, things are happening, and at the same time you can take action to safeguard your own interests, different types of interests, including your own sort of financial interests, moon trine sun. So if you think that something needs to be done financially, or you need to check on something, make sure that everything is in order, you can do it, and your actions should work out very well. Additionally, Moon makes a square to Venus and Jupiter, and when we think about squares, we often think about tension and stress, and it's always good to have a bit of tension, because if there's no tension at all, it's all just too easy, and just things happen too quickly, and we perhaps lose control. But with this Moon square Venus and Jupiter, it reminds you that things really are working in your favor at the moment. It reminds you that there's this conjunction between Venus and Jupiter in your sign, and Jupiter is really powering through Cancer. It's now almost reaching the halfway stage. It's 14 degrees 21 Cancer, so you could say that it has a sort of special power over you. And of course Venus is at 15 degrees 45, so the Venus Jupiter midpoint is right at 15 degrees Cancer, so a real sort of central point for you. And so that's good, particularly good if you have got a point at 15 degrees Cancer, if you've got your ascendant at 15 degrees Cancer, or if you've got Moon at 15 Moon, or the Sun at 15 degrees Cancer, or a few degrees either side. That would be particularly good. But all Cancerians are going to benefit from this Venus Jupiter conjunction, halfway through the sign. And so fortune is smiling on you. It wants things to work. It wants you to do well. And the Moon square Venus and Jupiter it's challenging you. It might be gently reminding you that things are looking good, that things can be good, but it's also reminding you that you can't be complacent, and that you have to apply yourself. And you can apply yourself in many areas, and you don't have to keep yourself to yourself. You should, as far as possible, have a relatively high profile. Be somewhere where you can be seen, be somewhere where people take you seriously, where you can be recognized as some kind of authority figure. You have authority, and people will listen to you, and people will follow you, if you give them the chance, if you're prepared to accept the responsibility that the universe is giving you. And that Moon square Venus Jupiter is really saying, you are lucky. What are you going to do with that luck? It would be a shame if you were to waste it. And that's why the dynamism of the square is perhaps such a good thing. It forces you to think about it. It makes you troubled, and sometimes it's good to be troubled, because trouble causes you to take action. I'm not saying overall it's going to be a troubling day, but it's always good to be under a bit of pressure. If there's no pressure at all, then it often doesn't work, does it? It's like when you're taking an exam. You need to have some tension. You don't want to be a nervous wreck, but you need to have some tension, because that keeps you going. That does keep you focused. And the Moon trine Sun could be quite material, even though there are no planets in Earth signs. Absolutely none at the moment, unless you count the South Node in Virgo. So no planets in Earth signs, and that means that a lot of people are not being very grounded. But with the Moon trine Sun, you can be grounded in your own way, and it's just you know what needs to be done, and you know how to secure things. So if something needs to be secured, you feel something needs to be clarified, and you want to address yourself to to money or some aspect of the whole structure of your ambitions and you getting properly rewarded. That's something, Cancer, that you can do, and it should really be very easy. And finally, there is relationships, how you get on with people. Yesterday there was a moon conjunct Saturn, and there might have been moments yesterday where things didn't always work out, where you felt there was perhaps issues with the power balance. Maybe someone had too much power, or you didn't know how to approach someone, or something like that. But today, Moon trine Sun. Moon trine Sun has many manifestations, and one interpretation of Moon trine Sun, can be about the masculine and the feminine having a good relationship to one another. Now that applies to everyone, but it applies to you especially because the moon is your ruler. So Moon trine Sun allows you to get on with people at many different levels, and it's not just on a material level, and it's also on a sort of an inspirational level, and even sort of an emotional level, because the moon is it's making a square to Venus and Jupiter. So there is that feeling of harmony today, or at least a potential for harmony. So if you want to get on with someone, and that's important to you, Cancer, then I think you certainly can. Leo, a lot of fire today, well, in the sense that there is a fiery trine between the moon and the sun. So the sun is obviously in Leo, and the moon is making the trine to the sun, and you should take advantage of it. Moon in Aries, trine sun in Leo. It's an aspect that is fairly regular. Happens quite often, every couple of weeks. But the next time the moon trines the sun won't be in Leo. It won't be in your sign anymore. I think that would happen when the sun is in Virgo and the moon is in Capricorn, I think. So you might then say, well, take advantage of this trine between the moon and the sun, because you won't get another trine between the sort of moon and the sun until the end of the year. Because let me clarify that. You won't get another trine between the moon and the sun in fire signs until the end of the year, because you have to wait for the sun to go into Sagittarius. And so if you look at the moon, the sun going into Sagittarius, and so the next time the moon makes a trine to the sun in fire signs will be on, looks like November the 30th. So you'll have a long time to wait. And so do take advantage of this trine between the moon and the sun, because it's fortunate for you. It does, I believe, work in your favor. And the sun is still in Leo. Remember, sun is not going to be in Leo forever. I must emphasize this. In sort of just over a week, the sun will be in Virgo, amazing as that sounds. So think about what needs to be done, think about what you'd like to be doing, and think about also what you need to explore, because there is something quite exploratory about the moon trine sun, getting into new things, discovering things. And also this moon trine sun could be about learning, and you have sort of ideas about what you should be learning, what you can learn, how you can just broaden your knowledge base. And there are many ways of doing this. You don't have to go to school or go to college to broaden your knowledge base. You can do it in so many sort of informal ways that don't cost any money. So many opportunities. It's strange, isn't it, with the internet, that the internet has provided so many opportunities for knowledge. You can just get knowledge about anything. Yet it also seems that very often people seem not particularly knowledgeable. That knowledge levels seem to be going down. Obviously not for people watching my channel, but in general that seems to be a contradiction there. And you have a chance to learn about more stuff, and you can do that. You can certainly do that today. I mean, you can always do it, but I'm just saying that today it's a particularly good time to be embarking on knowledge gathering activities. And so, if you start studying something on the internet, so whether it's YouTube, or you might want to read a book if that's something you're able to do. I mean, of course you're able to read a book, but it might just be easier to look at a video. So use that moon trine sun as far as you can. Now, the moon trine sun might additionally have a spiritual connotation, taking things beyond yourself. And for Leo, that's an interesting challenge. We know the sun is in Leo. I mean, obviously, sun is in your sign, so you have a clear sense of who you are and who you're not as well. And also you have an idea about your boundaries and what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And the moon trine sun, it's not a challenging aspect. So it's not forcing you to do anything, but it's allowing you to naturally elevate yourself, to naturally move yourself to a different level, perhaps to an exalted level. So you can do this, very easily. And you can become aware of sort of higher levels of existence and higher levels of consciousness, perhaps. And so that might be a way in which the moon trine sun can work. And you don't at the same time have to do this, all on your own. At the moment, Leo, you are dynamic. Of course you're dynamic because you've got moon in Aries trine the sun in Leo. But this dynamism does extend to the way you're able to interact with other people. You can be quietly forceful. You can perhaps force your way into another person's presence. You can interrupt. And you can interrupt in such a way that it doesn't seem like an interruption. You're just there, and when you're just there, you seem very natural. So you're unlikely to be out of place today. I mean, you might at times feel you're pushing your boundaries too far, but your boundaries can go a long way, and so do bear that in mind. And it's very important that you don't limit yourself, because today, well, I'm not saying today is going to be limitless, but you can take things a long way if you so wish. Virgo. Mercury is making a sextile to Mars, and Mercury will be making this sextile to Mars for some time. As I was telling Gemini, that there is this. Was it Gemini? I think it was Gemini. That Mercury and Mars have this very interesting relationship to one another. That Mercury is apparently beyond the sextile of Mars, because Mercury is at 4 degrees 34 Leo, and Mars is at 4 degrees 11 Libra, so it appears that Mercury is going beyond Mars. But the thing is that Mercury is going very slowly. At the moment, Mercury may be direct, but its speed is very low. It's certainly slower than Mars. So for a short period of time, Mars is going faster than Mercury and appears to be moving away from a sextile of Mercury. But then Mercury gathers speed and catches up with Mars and moves beyond the sextile. But this does mean that there is an ongoing Mercury-Mars sextile, and I think Virgo, it's something that you can use. You don't have to feel that you can't say anything, that you have to keep your thoughts to yourself. Mercury in Leo, it's not the greatest place for Mercury to be. It can be, from a Virgo perspective, a time when you want to be quiet, when you don't want to tell everyone what you're thinking, but you can. There is a way, and you're going to be helped by that sextile between Mercury and Mars. It's ongoing sextile, and so don't think that you've missed your moment. Perhaps because Mars seems to be going faster than Mercury. You haven't missed your moment, and there's always a moment to say the things that matter, and you can be very effective. And so find the way for saying whatever needs to be said. And it's not just about saying, it's about what you're thinking about in your own way, and give yourself the opportunity to think things through. And moments of peace and quiet could be very much appreciated. When there are no disturbances, when you can think straight, then you can allow things to sort of quietly develop. And so you might have some good ideas, and these ideas, they might not be immediately attractive, but once you start working on them, you'll start to see what is possible. And don't underestimate the impact you can have on other people. You can come over as being someone who is interesting and exciting, and you might be able to do something that really wasn't expected of you, which confounds the general Virgoan image. Virgoans do have a reputation, probably an unfair reputation, for sort of doing things by the book and for being very, very perhaps predictable. They want to do things properly, and that's just a reputation. Maybe it's just a textbook reputation. It's not really the real you. And what you can do when you're with people is create surprises, showing a side of your personality that you don't normally reveal, or it may be something you've just worked out. There has been a lot of working out over the last few weeks, and something has perhaps connected, and you haven't put it to the test. And now might be the time to put something to the test. You try it out, see what happens, and you will, I think, get quite an immediate response, and it's a response that will be certainly interesting, and it may have an impact on how people relate to you. But I think as well as being interesting, I do think that it's going to be fortunate as well. And you don't forget also, Virgo, that Venus is still making a conjunction to Jupiter, and this Venus-Jupiter conjunction, you could argue, is socially protective. So there might be times when you're worried about how people are going to respond to you. You might think that if you do something dramatic or you say something unexpected, that it might undermine your position, but it won't, because Venus and Jupiter are making this conjunction, still making this conjunction, and it's a very fortunate aspect, and it's socially fortunate, and it allows you to get on with people, without having to try too hard. And you do want to keep some things to yourself, and that's good, but it's very important that no one suspects that you're keeping anything to yourself. You've got to give the impression of being completely open if you want to get people's trust. And there are still things that you want to keep to yourself. That's absolutely okay, but ideally people won't suspect it. And if they think that you're being open, that might be enough. if they think you're being open and honest, they'll trust you. Just make sure that the process of keeping a secret is kept secret. Libra. There might be a certain focus on other people today because we've got a lot of activity in Aries. Well, when I say a lot of activity, you've got the moon in Aries, and we've got the Saturn in Aries, we've got and Neptune and Chiron, but it's the moon that matters. And so with the moon in Aries, you might have to take into account other people's needs. And the moon was in Aries yesterday, and yesterday there might have been a few issues because the moon was conjunct Saturn, the moon was conjunct Neptune, and that might not always have been too easy, and you might have felt that you had to hold something back. But now things have changed. Moon is in Aries, it's making a trine to the sun. And so with moon trine sun, I think, Libra, that you're in a position where you can really take advantage of all of the social connections you have. And remember that Libra is a very sociable planet, so use your sociability, and don't feel that you have to do things on your own. You don't. And if you need help or support, I think that support is going to very much be there. And if you have a chance to be with people, then do take advantage of that chance. And it's okay to be sociable, and enjoy other people's company. And a lot of it is about that trine between the moon and the sun. The moon and the moon trine sun is about things flowing, things moving, in terms of your social life and also relationships as well. So you don't feel that you have to do things on your own. And sometimes you might have to work with other people in a way that, to begin with, you're not entirely happy about. The moon does make a square to Venus and Jupiter, so we've got this great Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Cancer, which I think should really be working for you, allowing you to be successful and dynamic and to have an enhanced status. But then the moon square Aries does challenge it. And so if you've got ambitions, something you really want to do, you might find that another person's actions appear to be threatening, or you don't know how to work with them. They don't seem to be helpful at first sight. And maybe that is referring to a challenge. So if you have ideas about what you want to do next, and if you have ambitions, you may be challenged to take these ambitions and share them with another person, or tell another person about them, or get some feedback from another person. And this feedback may at first sight not appear to be particularly constructive. You may think that you're being challenged, and that might bother you, but it shouldn't bother you, because everything is working today. It's another fortunate day, and just if things seem complicated, don't worry about it. You're able to deal with it all. It's really not a problem, and you shouldn't worry about listening. Listening is fine. People do have things to say. And there may be one particular person who is just right there, right in front of you. They're close, and it won't take much to get them to open up, and for you to be able to sort of hear what they really think. And if you do have opportunities to get someone else's opinion, you really do avail yourself of those opportunities. And it's not like you have to do what you're told. you're just hearing another view, and that can be so useful. And perhaps you might realize that some of your ambitions, and hopefully you've got ambitions, you should have ambitions, but you might realize that some of your ambitions can work best when you get support from other people. It is possible, but it's not going to be entirely easy for you. At some level you'd like to do things on your own, but it's not that kind of time. I think that if you can do things with another person in a team or in some sort of cooperative environment, that would be best. Though one final thing, Libra, if you have a sense of right and wrong sort of more in a sort of a legal way, like rules, codes, laws, if you have that kind of sense, then do trust that, because Libra, the symbol of Libra is the balance, of course, the scales. Of course, if you've been to London, you'll see, is it the Old Bailey? It has the sort of statue of justice with the scales, and so there is a connection between Libra and justice and law. And right now, Libra, you have a good sense of rules and laws and how to use rules and laws to maximize your own position. And additionally, you will have a sense of what is wrong and what is not right. So it might be that someone has a suggestion, someone has ideas, and it's wrong. I mean, not necessarily morally wrong, but it might be legally wrong, or it might break some code. And so if you get an intuition about rules and laws, do follow it. Don't just shut up because you think that someone knows more than you, and it's just a thought. No, if you get that kind of idea, trust yourself to make good legal judgments, even if you're not a lawyer or a judge. Scorpio. At the moment, things aren't necessarily 100% easy. You know that things are happening, and you can see movement, all around you. But it may not necessarily be running in exactly the way you had expected. And because of that, you might be of a view that you have to take action, and you might have to just sort something out. And you were probably aware of this yesterday, but today it's clearer, and you're going to have a fairly good idea about what needs to be done, and you're not feeling entirely easy about it. It might seem rather boring, and additionally you might be of the opinion, someone else could have done it. Why is it down to you? Well, it is down to you, and maybe you're the person that can do it best. So if you've got a job that needs to be done, then the person who should do the job is the person who is most competent, and the person who is most competent right now might be you yourself. And one aspect we do have today is a trine between the moon and the sun, and I'm making quite a big deal about this sun-moon trine. One reason I'm making a big deal about it is because there's not a great deal else going on, not in a direct, exact sense. And this moon trine sun does make certain things very easy, and it makes it easy for you to get things done, to do things that other people don't want to do. And as I've already said, you can do them well. So you don't complain. And being a Scorpio, you do like to be in control. You don't want to be responsible or made responsible because someone else messes it up. You assume that they were going to do a good job. They don't do a good job, then you have to carry the can. So you want to take responsibility for what you do, and so the more you do, that might mean that you have to micromanage if you're in a position of authority. Micromanagement isn't always ideal, but today it might be okay. And one reason for that is details do matter, and today a lot of people don't get the details. They don't really understand what needs to be done, not fully. But you, Scorpio, you do understand, and you understand not because you notice things, not because you notice that there's a speck of dust here and a speck of dust there and there's a cobweb up there. It's not like that. It's because you have a sensitivity to what needs to be done, and also an intuition. You just know it. You get it, and other people don't get it. And so it's just important that you do what is right, and you do what is necessary. And at the same time, Scorpio, you are able to be pretty clear about your opinions. If you want to say something, you can certainly say it. It just comes from nowhere. You're very clear about it. And Scorpio is a sign that doesn't suffer fools gladly. And so if anyone is irritating you or isn't pulling out weight or is getting something wrong, you'll certainly know how to bring them down to earth through the power of your invective. But is that the right thing to do? Not necessarily. You can express your annoyance in many different ways, and don't forget that humor can play a role. You can appear to make light of something and hope that the other person gets the message, and I think in many cases they will get the message. So Scorpio, in spite of you feeling a bit uneasy today, it is a day when you are in control and when you can be in control, and things will happen your way. And if that means that you have to do more work than you, strictly speaking, wanted to, then don't worry about it too much. Sagittarius. We have a trine between the sun and the moon. And we've got the moon in Aries, and we've got the sun in Leo. And this trine, I would say, Sagittarius is pretty fortunate. It's in fire signs. You're a fire sign, and it's not every day that we get the sun and the moon both in fire signs, both making a trine, and so although the sun-moon trine itself is a fairly common aspect, it's not quite so common when it is in fire signs. I think the next time the moon and sun are in trine aspect in fire signs is on November the 30th. So November the 30th, you have got obviously sun in Sagittarius, and I think you've got the moon in Aries on November the 30th. Yeah, so you've got the end of November, you've got another fiery trine between the sun and the moon. So so make the most of this one. So you don't have to wait until the end of the year to get another one. And so with this trine, things can move, and you should hopefully feel pretty energized. You have a chance to make things happen. I mean, you have had this ability to make things happen for some time, but now it really is coming together. And so if Sagittarians are not happy about something, they can respond immediately. Or if there's something you want to happen, Sagittarius, you can just make it happen, and it just comes from nowhere, and you can put enormous amount of energy into getting results. And at the same time, you can make very fast decisions. You can suddenly decide this is the moment. This is a moment where you have to act, and you do it. And the results can be very powerful, and they can be long-lasting. So I could just say, well, enjoy the day. I mean, although the moon doesn't just make a trine to the sun, it does make a square to Jupiter. So Jupiter is, of course, your ruler, and so moon square Jupiter. That's an aspect that we need to give some consideration to, and it can be an aspect that is indulgent. You just do something excessive. There's no reason for excessiveness. It is all about just spontaneous action. Spontaneous action cannot be excessive because it has a higher source. But if we're talking about excessiveness, that might relate to leisure and pleasure. Just doing something because you just enjoy it, you just want to do it, and you maybe want to show that you have power. So the question is, how do you demonstrate that you've got power? Now, hopefully, you can do it just through sheer spontaneity, living in the moment, having an idea, putting it into action. So that's real power. But there's a difference between that and just being excessive, exaggerating something. You take something and you make it bigger than it actually is, and that might mean that there is a slight danger that you misuse the day's energies. You're indulgent, and you're perhaps thinking too much about yourself, and also you might be trying too hard to make an impression. So whatever you're doing, don't try too hard. If you try too hard, then you might be spoiling some of the day's good luck. Though I don't want to make you feel self-conscious or anything. It can be a great day, and it's a day when you don't have to do things on your own. You can enjoy other people's company, and you can listen to what other people have to say, and do listen to what other people have to say. There is a sextile between Mercury and Mars. It's a very verbal sextile, and you're not the only one who has ideas, the only one who feels inspired. Other people, everyone, in fact, is benefiting from this moon trine the sun, and also this Mercury sextile Mars. So do listen to what's being said, and you don't think that you've got everything sorted out. You haven't. You've got a lot sorted out, but there are some things you don't know about, and it's good if you can get the information you need. And you might be told something that really hadn't occurred to you before, and at first you might want to ignore what you're being told because it doesn't seem relevant to you, doesn't seem relevant to your experiences. But think about it again, because really everything is relevant, and the more you know, the better. So overall, Sagittarius, it does look like being a great day, but don't be too obsessed with yourself. If you want to be yourself and to be someone and to go beyond yourself, you mustn't get caught by yourself. Capricorn, we are well into Leo season. The sun is continuing to move through Leo. It's now moving into the last decanate of Leo, because you can divide a sign into 3 decanates, 30 degrees in a sign, so 3 portions, each being 10 degrees long. So Sun in Leo and Capricorn, it's not an easy mix, and Leo is perhaps just too much of a good thing. The sun is in its own sign in Leo, and a lot of people have high opinions of themselves, and you're watching other people's behavior and other people's extravagances, maybe with a certain amount of disgust. So that's something you might feel. And so this is not maybe your time of year. I mean, all things being equal, and it's not about the weather. Of course, the weather will be very different if you're in the northern hemisphere. Of the southern hemisphere, it's sort of high summer in the northern hemisphere, winter in the southern hemisphere. But it just feels, perhaps Capricorn, that it's not entirely your time, and matters are made more problematic by the fact that we don't have any planets in Earth signs. And so Sun in Leo can be very ungrounded, thinking only about itself. And yeah, people have egos. And the question is, what are they doing? They're doing stuff. Why are they doing it? And this could be disconcerting. And Capricorn, it's not a problem. It's not really a problem for you. It's not causing you any damage. It's just the way you feel. And additionally, when you look at the world around you, you look at what people are doing, and you look at people's motivations. It doesn't make much sense, and this could be it could be the case that you feel like you are the adult in the room. You see things in a different way. You have a perspective, and you have a separation because of this, and that might give you an advantage because you're not caught up in it all, and you have a degree of objectivity which just other people just don't have. And given all of this, it's tempting to be ever so slightly arrogant, and maybe Leo has a shadow connotation for you. Leo is everything you're not, and Leo might then represent something that you refuse to accept in yourself. And it's okay to be proud just a bit. It's okay to enjoy your separation, even to enjoy your sort of glorious isolation. Not that you need be isolated, really. I mean, that's a state of mind. Venus and Jupiter are still in Cancer. They're still making a conjunction in Cancer, and Cancer is your opposite sign. And so that this Venus-Jupiter conjunction means that there are people who are, very much there for you, and you may not always understand what people are doing and why they're doing what they're doing. But you are not alone. You're not the only person who thinks what you are thinking, and if you make the effort, you'll understand that there are connections there. And also, I said at the beginning of this piece, the Sun is in the last decanate of Leo. So the Leo season is arguably coming to an end. In just over a week, the Sun will be in Virgo. In fact, there's a new moon, I think, right at the beginning of Virgo. That's going to be a big change for you. And that might be a time where you can start to sort of move to the center of things. Now, one aspect we have today is a trine between the moon and the sun. And this trine between the moon and the sun, for you, it could emphasize your isolation. And I don't mean isolation in a negative way. It's about your separation. You're just not part of things. You have your independence, and that might be what it's really talking about. Your independence of thought, and you're not getting caught up with things. You're not just going with the flow. You are different, and you are holding firm. And with this moon trine sun, you're able to not move and consider, and you're able to relate your feelings, to the way you are, to the place you've decided to call home, and so with this independence you can work out your own stance. And I think that the moon trine sun is really going to help you, and certain things will start to become clear if you give them a chance. And so don't get annoyed, don't get angry, don't get obsessed with your own position of sort of isolation. Well, be thankful for the fact that you have a separateness, that you're just not getting caught up in the tide of things, and so you can work out what your position actually is, and in the end, that is going to be useful. And don't forget also that the moon is making a square to Venus and a square to Jupiter, and the challenge there is to share and to be open with certain people. Not everyone is bad news. Not everyone is just caught up with the chaos of everyday life, obsessed with themselves, obsessed with themselves, but at the same time not thinking straight. And not everyone is like that. And you have a chance to get through to certain people, and the people who you've trusted in the past will show that they can be trusted in the future. Aquarius. The sun is still in Leo, and the moon makes a trine to the sun. And this trine between the sun and the moon is the major feature of the day, you could say. I'm talking about this moon trine sun at the end of this video, and it's a fortunate aspect, and it's fortunate for you because it does say something about what you're experiencing, and also it says something about relationships. I mean, it has to say something about relationships. I mean, the sun is moving through your opposite sign. Leo is your opposite sign, and so what the sun in Leo can signify is another person who has their own strengths. And with the moon trine sun, you have a chance to communicate, and it goes beyond communication. You have a chance to really get close to someone. Okay, it depends on your circumstance, but perhaps you say something or you start talking about something, and it appears to be sort of quite casual, quite trivial, but if you can really talk to someone, really get to know someone with that moon trine sun, then you should really try to do it, because once a good conversation starts, it will just continue. And so don't necessarily think that other people are a complete mystery, that you can't get through to them. You can, and if you're prepared to really listen to another person, and at the same time express some of your opinions, then I think you're going to get some really good results. So don't think, Aquarius, that you are alone. I mean, I know that sometimes you do feel that you're alone. Aquarius does value its own independence, but you can take this too far, and sometimes you have to try to understand what other people are experiencing. And it's not just about other people, it's also about the planet on which you're living. And at the moment you're very aware that really no one knows what's going on. When you actually listen to people, because I hopefully you will give yourself a chance to listen to people, and you try to understand what they're thinking. Their confusion is manifest, and everyone's confusion is manifest. People just don't know, and people are vulnerable to this trend, that trend. Things can change so quickly, and few people can be real individuals. And that's something sort of collective. I mean, the moon trine to sun, in terms of relationships, close relationships, well, Sun in Leo does represent someone in your life who really is a real individual. So that is the personal, but on a collective level, then everyone is just a prey to their own, to not just to their own feelings, but to whatever's going on in the collective, because personal feelings are not necessarily independent. So people might think that they've got an independent set of emotions, but those emotions are influenced by other factors, and it's what's going on under the surface, and you're kind of aware of that. You're not fully aware of it, but you know that what you see on the surface isn't necessarily the real picture. But you shouldn't let it worry you. It's just an insight that you have, and as far as today is concerned, what is the best way of using today? Well, the best way of using today's energies and today's opportunities is to try to get on with people. Try not to spend a day alone. I think that with this moon trine sun, you do have the opportunity to really get to know people, and to at the same time find out what their viewpoint is. Now, their viewpoint may be very confused, and that's something you just need to know. So knowledge of other people and getting close to other people, if you can, would be the best way of approaching today, I think. Pisces. Venus is still making a conjunction to Jupiter. I mean, it was exact a day or two ago, but it's still there. And Venus-Jupiter conjunction, as I have said, it's a great aspect. It really does make you lucky, and it emphasizes a point that Jupiter is in Cancer. Jupiter stays in Cancer, I think, until June of next year. So while Jupiter is in Cancer, Pisces, do make the most of the opportunity, and with Venus conjunct Jupiter, you're able to be very creative, and you can really discover your creativity, and perhaps you can discover your creativity with other people's help. You get some feedback. People respond to what you do. They respond to what you say. They maybe respond to how you appear, how you occur to them. So their response is important, and the responses that matter are the responses that are positive and are constructive. And it is all about you. It's not a time to be following the crowd or doing what other people say. It is all about you, and I think that this Venus-Jupiter conjunction really does emphasize that. Though at the moment, looking specifically at today, Wednesday, the moon is moving through Aries, and the Aries is a sign which follows Pisces, and so the moon in Aries gives a different view, and it can in its own way be quite practical. You're thinking about perhaps what you need to do in order to make some of your ideas and aspirations permanent. You want them to be fixed. It's no good just having a wonderful idea, feeling good about something one day, and then it just disappears the next day. You have to create a structure by which it can become a permanent part of your life. And perhaps this is a challenge of Moon in Aries. And there are a number of things you have to consider. Some of them may be very mundane, like how things can be paid for. Some things do have to be paid for. And that might be a challenge. But the moon is making a trine to the sun. And that moon trine sun is an aspect that, for you, Pisces, is quite grounding. I know it doesn't sound very grounding, moon in Aries, trine the sun in Leo, but in the Pisces chart, it's about you working out what has to be done and not missing anything out. And so you're able to really be quite sensible, surprisingly sensible. You might, in fact, surprise yourself with how sensible you are. And you can be sensible, but in such a way that you're not undermining your own creativity. In fact, you're supporting your creativity, because you've got to get the balance right. Because if you're doing wonderful things, which are an essential part of yourself, you have to make sure that you can keep doing them. And the best way of keeping doing them is to make sure that the groundwork is all being done, and that is something today which you very much can do. Now, the moon does make a square to Venus and Jupiter, and there might be moments in the day where you do something that doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel that it's in character, and you may sort of lash out and do something that, when I say lash out, I don't mean lash out like in a hostile way. You might lash out and buy something. You might feel you just have to buy something, spend some money. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the right thing to do. You might think that you're safeguarding yourself or something has to be bought, but that's not necessarily the case. And so impulsive expenditure could be one way of looking at moon square Jupiter, moon square Venus. It depends what that expenditure is. If it's just a few dollars or a few euros or a few pounds, that's not a big deal. But if it's some larger amount, then that might not be so desirable. But it shouldn't define the day. I think that overall, it's a day when you can really sort of get yourself together and you can create the structure, for who you are and who you want to be. And that's it with the 12 signs. And I will now turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 16, which is enthusiasm. And this hexagram can also be called contentment. Greg Winkup, in his translation of I Ching, he calls it contentment. And contentment is perhaps a bit too passive a way of describing it, but enthusiasm is possibly too positive. And this hexagram number 16 is really very interesting, and sort of my own view of this hexagram has been sort of evolving, and it's not as positive as it sounds, because enthusiasm on its own goes nowhere. We just think that everything is great. It's all great, and we're totally focused on the present. And I know that we're told we should be focused on the present. I mean, that's what the Buddhists tell us, isn't it? That you live for the present. Don't worry about the past. The past is done, or the future. Well, we don't know. We might not be alive in the future. Every breath could be our last. So I understand the spiritual argument for living in the present, but there is a problem with living in the present, and the problem is that we're not thinking about what is about to happen, and we don't really understand the situation we're in. And enthusiasm can represent a time when we are in danger. Things are about to take a turn for the worse, and we don't seem to care because we're just enjoying the moment. And that links back to Greg Winkup's interpretation of this hexagram, just simply talking about contentment. We are content right now. We can see that something bad is just coming down the road, but it's not here yet. We needn't worry about it. And so that is a problem with this hexagram. So as far as you're concerned, don't forget this is just a hexagram this is just a reading for the day. I mean, don't worry about it too much. But think about your attitude to some of the important things in your life. Are you closing your eyes to something? Is there something coming up which you need to prepare for, but you're not preparing for it? You're just, you're just enjoying it. You're just enjoying yourself, and or rather, with contentment, you're just saying, well, things are okay now. We don't know what's going to happen next, but there is that warning, and we do get two moving lines, and so the bottom line moves, and the bottom line is not great. The bottom line is talking about potential arrogance. We think everything is fine. We are not just reassuring ourselves that everything is fine. We may even be telling other people that everything is fine. And so everything must be fine because we're saying it's fine. It may not be us. It might be someone else. You might be in a situation which you're not happy about it, but everyone else seems to be happy about it. It's fine. It's going to be okay. Let's not worry about it. And so no one wants to make changes. No one wants to improve the situation, and we should be trying to improve the situation. We should be trying to safeguard something, but we're not, or someone isn't, and we're perhaps just going along with the crowd. And the hexagram unfolds, and then we move to the top line. So the bottom line moves, and so does the top line. So the top line is perhaps when we see the problem. When we see that a problem we thought was a long way away is now right in front of us. It's almost there. Maybe it is there, but we have a moment of realization. We see things for how they are, how they really are, and so that is fortunate, because the penny has dropped, and finally we see what needs to be done. Is it too late? Probably not. No. We perhaps realized just in time. The top line, well, it's the end of the action. So if it's the end of the action, things are nearly too late, but not quite too late. And so we do have an opportunity to make a last minute change, and we realize that we've underestimated the situation, perhaps realize we've been careless, but better late than never. And then this hexagram, it does transition, and it moves to hexagram number 21, which is biting through. And I think that is quite appropriate in biting through. Biting through is about punishment, and perhaps we're punishing ourselves, or perhaps we are reprimanding someone else, or that something has to be resolved, and there is an awareness of mistakes, and there are a few recriminations here. I mean, that's biting through it. It's not an easy hexagram, but at least we realize there's a problem, or we might realize that someone else has been misbehaving, or perhaps we have been misbehaving. And so as far as what kind of punishment we're talking about, this is what's the word? It's about the kind of punishment that is about. I've lost the word. The punishment about where we can bring someone back to the center ground, where we can reform someone. It's not about punishing someone just to make someone miserable, to set an example for someone. To set an example for the world. It's rather about making someone a better person, and that's what biting through is about. And we looked at the last line of the previous hexagram of enthusiasm. We realize our mistakes, and biting through, having realized our mistakes, we work on it. We work on ourselves. We fix a problem, and we make sure that we are protected, before disaster strikes. And so it's quite a harsh reading in a way, but I don't think disaster actually happens here. I think that we get close to disaster, or we are aware we are aware of how close we are to that disaster, and we can make a last minute change. And we might have to be tough about it. We might have to communicate our displeasure to other people and make the necessary changes. So it's going to be okay, but we do have to be very realistic and down to earth. And then we've got this trine between the moon and the sun. And I didn't really want to talk about politics or Russia or Ukraine. It just seemed to be easier to talk about something fairly generic, like a moon trine sun, which we get all the time, which I comment on quite a lot. And so let's start by looking at today's moon trine sun. So it's here. So here it is. This is the precise moment of the trine between the sun and the moon. I think it happens London time right at the end of the day, sort of just before midnight, 11:54. So if you are in continental Europe, most of continental Europe, or Asia, or Australia, or New Zealand, in fact, the moon trine sun happens tomorrow on Thursday. But the moon is applying to a trine of the sun all of today, Wednesday. So we shouldn't necessarily see it as happening at a particular time. And so here it is. Here's the precise moment. The moon is at 21:26 Aries, and the sun is at 21:26 Leo. And this is a grand trine, but it's not a grand trine. It's just a regular trine. Obviously, it's a trine in fire signs. It's very active. It facilitates action, and it also it facilitates intuition. It is very intuitive, this moon trine sun, and we're trying to work something out. We're trying to find solutions, and with the moon trine sun, it just suddenly becomes obvious. And perhaps that's something I should have made more of when I was going through the 12 signs. That when they're in exact aspect, just something becomes clear, and we might have been trying to work on something for ages and ages, banging our head against something, and suddenly it's all there. It's very simple, and we don't have to struggle with it. And it just could also be just that moment of the moment of clarity, the moment of action. And when you've got moon trine sun, particularly the applying moon trine sun, in theory, at least with astrological theory, it's a good time to be doing stuff. And so if you're doing an election, in other words, if you are trying to choose a time in which to do something, then having the moon applying to a trine of the sun is, it's great. I mean, it's as good as it gets. And the sun and the moon, we shouldn't forget, are representative of the feminine and the masculine. So the sun is a strong masculine principle, very archetypal, and likewise the moon is an archetypal feminine principle. And so when they're in trine, that's why I talk about harmony, that it is a harmonious aspect. When the sort of the yin and the yang are all sort of nicely balanced. And so you could say that really things should work. And additionally, we might want to see it in terms of the lunar cycle. So we have just had a full moon, and so the moon is waning, and we have a new moon. I think the new moon is just right at the beginning of Virgo. I think off the top of my head it's on August the 24th. We've got the new moon. So it's getting close. Is that right? The 24th is the new moon? Yeah, we've got 23rd. August 23rd, we've got a new moon at 0 degrees 23 Virgo. So that's coming up. And so when you think about the waning part of the lunar cycle, you're thinking that things aren't so good, things are in decline. But what does that trine mean? Well, the trine is a fortunate aspect. Things might be in decline, but it's a chance. It's a chance to get things together. We saw everything at the full moon. The full moon gave us the full picture. That full moon at 17 Aquarius, we understand everything. But now what? What do we do with that comprehension? Do we just let it be? Because just because we understand something doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't mean we're going to make any changes. And there might have been a challenge to make a change when the sun and the moon were 135 degrees apart, which was a day or two ago, but it's still a bit of a challenge. Now we've got the trine. And so you could say with the trine, this may be a chance to very easily or relatively easily change things. We've understood the picture, we get it, and now we're going to create the necessary changes. We're going to do it now. We're not going to wait until the square between the moon square the sun, where it's going to be more difficult. There's going to be more tension. With the trine, we can bring things together, and it maybe won't be so difficult. So you can see why I'm always positive about the moon trine the sun. It should be a good aspect, and why should it be a bad aspect? So how does that work in practice? Now, I was thinking about looking at some people with moon trine sun, but perhaps I've been looking too much at people. I thought instead I would look at events which take place when the moon was trine the sun. And as always, I have to say this is a very subjective set of events. It's the kind of events that I find interesting. And with these events, there is perhaps the reminder that moon trine sun may be more neutral than we realize. Moon trine sun can be about things just happening. When the moon is making a trine to sun, there's no resistance. It just happens, and events can get out of control pretty quickly with the moon trine sun. So perhaps we need to rethink this trine. It needn't always be a good thing. So let's look at some events. So as far as recent British history is concerned, relatively recent British history, so in the early 80s, Britain went to war with Argentina, 1982, and one of the big events of the war that Britain had with Argentina was the sinking of the Belgrano. So the Belgrano was an Argentine battleship which was getting close to the exclusion zone that the British had set around the Falkland Islands, and Margaret Thatcher ordered the Belgrano to be torpedoed. And so it was a big event. There was that famous headline that the Sun, the Sun is if you don't know, is a tabloid newspaper in the UK, and they had this headline, and the headline was "Gotcha," Gotcha, with a picture of, I may have had a picture of the Belgrano sinking. And so the Sun was really excited about it. Of course, a lot of people died, and it was a very controversial thing. And did Margaret Thatcher really have to order the sinking of this battleship? And it took place with an applying moon trine sun. I think I've got the time right. I say Port Stanley in the Falklands, but I did change the coordinates to fit the sort of the part of the Atlantic in which it happened, part of the South Atlantic. And so the moon was rising, making the trine to the sun. So with a moon trine sun, you have to think about it from a perspective of the submarine commander, the man who fired the torpedo. A lot of people were killed, but you could say that it was a successful operation. And so moon square sun, doesn't matter if it's an act of destruction. The moon trine sun can facilitate it. And the very fact that, if I've got this right, that the moon was rising, did strengthen that trine between the moon and sun. It really did facilitate the action there. And notice that the sinking of the Belgrano had Neptune on the IC, which sort of completely fits the sinking of a ship. And there were other bad events. I was in India at the end of 1984. I was in Goa at the end of 1984, and remember there was this huge piece of news, and that was the Bhopal disaster. So the Bhopal is a city in central India where there was a leak of methyl isocyanate, which is this obviously cyanide, got completely devastated the city of Bhopal. People were killed, they were maimed, they were blinded, and it was operated by this American company, Union Carbide, or Union Carbide owned it, and it was a major disaster, this leakage. So leakage, you could say that a moon trine sun could potentially facilitate it. And so here we have the moon in Aries trine the sun in Sagittarius. And so, yeah, things are leaking quite easily. You could say that the moon and the sun are applying to Mars. I'm not quite sure what's that about. I mean, I'm not saying that one can make any bad predictions on the basis of moon trine sun, but I'm just trying to encourage you to think that moon trine sun does not necessarily indicate a positive event, and just might mean that things happen easily and quickly. And we saw how easily it was for the Belgrano to be sunk. Okay, it was sunk by a nuclear submarine, and it was, I think it was the first sinking of a ship in anger with a torpedo since the end of the Second World War. Maybe maybe something happened like that maybe there could have been a sinking in the India-Pakistan war, but I think aside from the India-Pakistan war, I think it's a very rare event. That war in 1971. So that's Bhopal, and going back to British history, there were two disastrous events relating to football stadiums, and both, I think, involving Liverpool Football Club. And so one of them was Heysel Stadium, when I think that Liverpool were playing, I think it was Juventus, and there was crowd trouble, and it got out of hand, and a lot of people were killed, mainly Juventus fans. And as a result of this, English teams were banned from European competition. I mean, for quite a few years. And so there was crushing, and a lot of Juventus fans were killed. And it happened with moon trine the sun. I mean, I don't know why I've gone for 7 o'clock. I think it's 7 o'clock in the evening. I've set this for Brussels, Belgium, where Heysel Stadium is. And so the sun is on the 8th house cusp, and the moon is applying to the trine of the sun. So it all happened quickly. It all happened very sort of easily, and people didn't really realize what was going on. These sports commentators, they thought they were there to report on a football game, but in fact they were suddenly having to talk about something they weren't, just wasn't part of their job, having to talk about the tragedy of what happened at Heysel Stadium. And at the same time, I mean, not at the same time, but a couple of years later, there was another tragedy in Sheffield. I think this involved Liverpool Football Club, and this was a stadium where you definitely had a huge amount of deaths through crushing. And again, the Hillsborough tragedy goes on and on and on. It's still an issue in the UK. Nearly 40 years afterwards, people haven't forgotten Hillsborough. And so the moon was at 24 Leo, trine the sun at 25 Aries. So we're starting to see a picture here with moon trine sun. When you've got moon trine sun, it just means things are happening quickly, easily. I don't know why I've gone for 2 o'clock. I mean, there must be some time when that was the time that people are thinking about. But notice how the moon was rising, like we saw with the sinking of the Belgrano. And so moon trine sun, things happen easily, and it's not always good things that happen easily. It can be bad things as well. And something where there may have been some element of choice of timing was in 1980, during the Iran hostage crisis, when a lot of the American embassy officials had been taken hostage by the new Iranian regime, and there were attempts to rescue them. And here is the chart for the attempt to rescue them. They had this thing called I think it was called Desert One in the Iranian desert, and the idea was that these helicopters would land and they'd go in and they'd rescue the hostages, and it was a complete disaster. I think 2 planes crashed into each other, and there were, Americans were killed, and it just did not work out, and it was a major embarrassment for the Carter regime. It was just one of the reasons why Carter lost in 1980, but it should have been good though, shouldn't it? I mean, the moon. I mean, I've gone for 10:47 p.m. In the middle of Iran. Moon was trine the sun. It all, for an operation, we saw with the Belgrano, a military operation worked very well with moon trine sun, but this is an example of a military operation that didn't work at all. It worked very badly. I mean, I don't know if an astrologer chose this moment. I know that Reagan, or at least Nancy Reagan, consulted astrologers. I shouldn't think so, but moon was exactly trine sun. So that should have worked, but it didn't work. And so, this perhaps is a reminder that if we are making elections, if we're choosing times to do something, we can try hard, we can have moon trine sun, but that doesn't mean to say that it's all going to work. And another sort of tragic example of moon trine sun is the Idaho murders. Remember Brian Koberger sort of broke into this house in Moscow, Idaho, and he killed 4 students, and in a sort of horrific way. And he's now sort of pleaded guilty to that. And there was an applying trine between the moon and sun in Scorpio, moon in Cancer, applying to that trine. So this kind of illustrates that moon trine sun isn't necessarily a fortunate aspect. And with moon trine sun, you think of weddings. It is the marriage. It is the ultimate configuration of a marriage. So the sun is the male principle, the moon is the female principle. So if the sun and the moon are in trine, that would be a great time to get married, wouldn't it? And an example of someone who got married with moon trine sun, or a couple who got married with the moon trine sun, is Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, who got married on January the 20th, 1968. I don't know when they got married. It was a Saturday. I mean, wouldn't have been, I don't think, in the afternoon. So I've gone for midday, and at midday, the moon was making a great trine to the sun. You shouldn't just look at a moon trine sun in isolation. Of course, in the case of this wedding, the following year, Sharon Tate was, of course, murdered by the Mansons. So it was not in the end, it wasn't a great time to get married. But there were reasons for this, even if we just look at the chart, because the moon was conjunct Uranus, was very close to a conjunction of Uranus at the time of the marriage. And you might also argue that the moon and the sun were both in late degrees. I mean, the moon might have been in Aquarius. I'm just thinking that if a couple got married on a registry at a registry office in London, they wouldn't have got married in the afternoon after 1 o'clock. Maybe I'm wrong there, but still, the moon would have been trine the sun. But it's just in late degrees, not just late degrees, potentially in the sun and the moon in the last degree of the sign. And those of you who think that the last degree of the sign is unfortunate, it's sort of anaretic degree, this horoscope for the marriage of Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate does sort of support that argument. And moon trine sun, though, can be about relief, being happy about something. And O.J. Simpson, the moment of O.J. Simpson's acquittal in October the 3rd, 1995. O.J. Simpson, he killed his former wife and another man, and the evidence seemed to be pretty much overwhelmingly against him, but still the jury acquitted him because there were suggestions about police racism, and there was some, I don't know, I didn't really follow the trial as much as I could have done, but it was it was an incredibly big deal, the O.J. Simpson trial, and he was acquitted, and he was acquitted with the moon making a trine to the sun. So that might have been, from a defence perspective, that might have been a good time to wrap up this trial. Of course, they didn't have much choice as far as the jury. The jury would have made their decision whenever they made their decision. But that's an example of moon trine the sun. Now, so far I've looked at things which are pretty negative, and let's finish with a positive event, and that's the discovery of Chiron. So Chiron was discovered on November the 1st, 1977 at 9:56 a.m. It was discovered in the morning. I'm not quite sure how that works, but Chiron there's moon conjunct Jupiter, and so the moon was just separating from a trine to the sun, and the moon was fairly close to a trine of Uranus. And so when you're looking at a discovery of a planet, that may say something about the nature of Chiron. And Chiron, moon trine sun, does that say something about the flow of Chiron? So could you then say that if you're trying to interpret Chiron, that it has some of the properties of moon trine sun sort of in it at some level, and moon trine Uranus as well? So, as far as discovery is concerned, if you're trying to discover something, then moon trine sun, when you've got the two lights making a fortunate aspect to one another, things flow, and things can happen, and things aren't always bad. So that's it with moon trine sun. I thought I'd just give an alternative view about what it might mean in real life. There's some examples of events which in the main are not particularly fortunate. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.